We have from Fourth Wave Now, which is a reference to we need a fourth wave of feminism because the third wave is destroying us. The Twitter account Fourth Wave Now, which is terrific, has tweeted a video, which we will show you a little bit of, called Puberty and Transgender Youth from an organization called amaze.org, which sells itself as a sex education for young people, although when you look deep into their site, you find them interested in speaking to people younger than young adults. As Fourth Wave Now says about this video, this is one of the vids that a New Jersey school district is considering for 5th grade sex ed. So I'm going to read the description on the video, which you guys can't see yet. Oh, there it is. Everyone has a gender identity, a feeling or a sense of being male, female, or somewhere in between. Sometimes people's gender identity matches their bodies, and sometimes it does not. Someone may be born with a penis and identify as a girl, or born with a vagina and identify as a boy. This person may have a gender identity that is called transgender. What's important to remember is that people deserve to express themselves in ways that feels right for them and to be respected no matter how they identify, look, or dress. So we haven't even watched the video yet, and we're not going to watch the whole thing, even though it's short. But they begin with a premise, and so many of the arguments over in transactivism land and in let's teach little children sex ed land now are just making claims that aren't true. And they say them as if they're the most obvious thing in the world, and then they connect them to things that are true. And it becomes hard for people who are embattled or in any way just tired of it and don't want it to be their main thing to separate these things out. So this begins with everyone has a gender identity. Really? Like, that's a new concept. That's a social concept. Gender, as we have talked about in the past, we understand to be the human equivalent of what in non-human animals is called sex role, which is variously the software to the hardware of sex, or in animals, the behavioral representation, the behavioral manifestation of the sex that you are. Gender identity is, frankly, if it exists at all, is certainly not intrinsic and fundamental and basic. It is regressive, and usually it's going to be, frankly, misogynistic if it's going against any particular sex at all. In that, it basically says if you are interested as a child in things that traditionally have tended to be the wheelhouse, the bailiwick of the other sex, well, then your gender identity is the other sex. So if you're a mathy little girl, your gender identity is male. Well, this is sexist and regressive and backwards and horrifying.
All right. Two critiques of it. One, the problem is it basically is promoting a wish, which may be transient, to a state of being. Yes. Right? In other words, you might want to be the other sex, but it doesn't mean that you are the other sex, identify as the other sex. It could be a legitimate want, or it could be a passing phase, but it doesn't really make any sense to promote it. You know, as you point out, it's the either the behavioral manifestation or the software of sex. And so the point is,
gender is, but gender identity is like a step further in terms of craziness.
It means if you wish it, then it is, right? And that doesn't,
as if it's something internal, which
right. It does not add up that you would promote it. And the other thing is the need to have this conversation, right? You may wish that you were the other sex and not be, and then essentially you are, has never been less, because the freedom to be whatever you want to be, to do in the world what you want to do, to fall in love with who you want to fall in love with, that freedom is essentially total, at least in the West, right?
Or at least it was becoming so. And I feel certain that this begins to undermine and reverse many of those gains. So before you keep going, let's just show a little bit of this video. Zach, I think I told you how much of this video to show, okay?
Hi, Fish. Come here. Oh, you need a name. Let's see. Wait a second. What gender are you? A person who is transgender is someone whose internal sense of their gender, being a boy, girl, or something else, doesn't match their physical body. People who feel this way sometimes feel anxious when they begin to reach puberty and their body starts to change in ways that don't match their internal sense of their gender. These feelings are totally normal. If you feel you want more time to explore how you feel about your gender before your body starts to change, it's important to talk with a parent, counselor, therapist, or doctor about the feelings you have regarding your gender. After some discussion and counseling, you may be referred to an endocrinologist. Endocrinologists specialize in hormones, and they are the most likely to prescribe puberty blockers for someone who wants them. Puberty blockers are medications that will stop your body from changing. They are usually given as an injection or an implant. They block the production of hormones to stop or delay the physical changes of puberty. The effects of the medication are only temporary, so if a person stops using puberty blockers, the physical changes of puberty will begin again. Whether you
So, the effects of the medication are only temporary. So if a person stops using puberty blockers, the physical changes of puberty will begin again. This is a claim with no connection to reality. And put that together with the claim that was made on the banner but not spoken in the video. So for those just listening, there was a banner across the top near the end of what we just showed you that said, "Unfortunately, not all health insurance covers the cost of puberty blockers." We are experimenting with children. Those children experimented on will never be the same. Some of them will be okay. Many of them will not. And they will have every right to come asking of the adults, of all of us, what it is that we were doing, what it is, how it is that we allowed giant numbers of children to be halted in their development, pretending that you can do that with complex physiological, anatomical, yes, endocrinological systems, and that it will all be fine, that you can just say stop for a while, and then if I decide I'm fine, I'll go back to it. And you do that, furthermore, to a child who is already feeling anxious and confused, and maybe hopeless, and maybe a lot of other things. But no child who's feeling awesome about things and is going through a developmental period in which things are going smoothly decides, actually, I'm the other thing. So these are children who, maybe for completely normal reasons, and maybe because they are undergoing other trauma or they have other mental health issues, have decided that they have found the solution. Or maybe even worse, that they don't even know what the solution is, but what is being sold to them is, if you aren't sure, here's what we're going to do for you. Having done that to them, they are guaranteed not to be able to walk back into a normal development or a normal life ever again.
Yes, it is a case in which we are falling down on our most fundamental responsibility to children, right? We are supposed to give signposts and beacons that lead children into the state of being that is most likely to be one in which they can be effective and feel fulfilled and rewarded and find companionship. And instead, we are telling them things that we know aren't true, right? There is no reason that it should be true, that you can start a puberty blocker and if you change your mind, stop the puberty blocker and just pick up where you left off. Yeah, that was quite something.
Yeah. So for those watching and listening, our lights just flickered. Hopefully we can finish the podcast.
Hopefully we can carry on. That was quite the lightning strike, I assume. But anyway, the point is, you're talking about a radical intervention into a complex system in which we already know that it's not a stop it will, start it will system. We have the evidence of that. How bad it is, we couldn't possibly have the evidence. We'll find out when hundreds of thousands of people have had their puberty stopped and restarted, and we see what the full effects are over the course of a lifetime. But it is radically misinformative. And then we are also, just even the way that video starts, right? Everybody has a gender identity, and sometimes people's gender identity doesn't match their sex. And the answer is, look, kids, part of what being a child is is getting enough experience, and where you can't get enough experience, getting enough information from people who have seen a larger part of the world about how common things are, right? So imagine a child lying in bed, looking at a shadow in their room and imagining it might be some terrifying thing, right? And the adult's job is to come in and say, nope, there aren't any terrifying things here. In fact, in my whole life, I've seen 7 things that are terrifying, and they were grizzly bears in Glacier National Park or whatever.
They were never in your bedroom.
Right. They were never in your bedroom. The thing is that those things don't exist. And so when you tell a child, those things aren't here. They're not under your bed. They're not on the wall. They're not in the closet. They're not in the neighborhood walking the streets, right? They're not. They don't necessarily get it right away. But the point is their experience begins to match what you've told them. And they will, over time, become an adult who knows that those things aren't there, right? Whereas if you tell them, oh, yes, having a gender identity that is out of phase with your morphology is something that happens to lots of people, right? You are giving them the exact opposite of information so that to the extent that they have a stray thought that doesn't feel like it fits somewhere, they don't gravitate to, aha, this is that thing I saw in that video, right?
If I'm a girl who wants to have short hair, I must be a boy inside.
Right.
This is, I mean, at the moment, I've been flabbergasted and angry at many aspects of this for a long time now. But at the moment, it's the explicitly anti-woman, anti-female, sexist, misogynistic, regressive part of it that is just amazing, because it is coming from the people who brought us the Me Too movement, who brought us, who are supposedly the standard bearers of feminism, but it is this third wave feminism, which is regressive, which I have for many years called, faux feminism, and for which we have fourth wave feminism, fourth wave now accounts and others, suggesting, boy, do we need a fix. Boy, do we need to get back to thinking about, how it is, for instance, that straight couples can live together in love and harmony and not try to make each other into the other thing.
Right.
Right? Because men are not women and women are not men. And on average, men do tend to, for instance, be better at gist style of things, and women tend to be better at detail styles of things. And there are some amazing, brilliant women at gist and amazing, brilliant men at details. But pretending that if we're going to live together as equals, in which we both respect one another, we have to be the same thing is backwards. And imagining that what you can do is say, oh, well, I'm actually good at some of those things that have traditionally been and maybe more likely to be in the domain of men. Maybe I'm a man. No, I'm not. And neither is any other woman who has ever been good at math or sports or, anything of science, like all of these things that are so powerful. And what crazy world would say, if you're interested in those things, you're actually a dude? I can't believe we're having this conversation in the 21st century. It's unbelievable.
It's crazy. And the fact is, the facts, they're plenty good enough.
Yeah.
You know what? There are trans people. They are very, very rare. The chances that you are one are very low. The fact is, some trans people may not have come out because there was a lot of pressure not to do so.
Back in the day.
Mm-hmm. That has become much less significant. If you think you might be trans, you ought to wait a whole bunch of time and figure out if it clears up, because it does for most people. And that's certainly the simplest way to go about it, rather than doing some radical medical experiment on yourself that will probably leave you infertile and disrupt who knows what other processes at the same time, right? There's nothing wrong with the facts here. The facts are conveyable. In the rare case where those facts are salient, they can be conveyed. We don't need to pretend, right? It's preposterous.